My name is Agnes Holmes. I have resided in Baltimore County for a total of 67 years.
Okay. And how would you explain or identify your earlier years in Baltimore County?
Baltimore County has really been a blessing for me. I've learned a lot. I've done a lot. But one of the things that I can say about Baltimore County is it was community orientated to where everyone looked out for one another. And by Ruth Avenue being a only integrated avenue, I really didn't know what segregation was until I started school in the first grade.
Okay. At what point did you realize there was a gender and race inequality?
As I just mentioned, when I went to my first year in school at the age of 6, where all of my other children went to one school and all of the black children went to their school.
Okay.
And that's when I realized that it was something different then.
Okay. And were you ever directly discriminated against?
When we started the integration process, which I was in the third grade, a lot of the teachers had a little way that they would say things or treat you. But the majority of the teachers were very kind. I can really say that. They didn't make you feel inadequate.
Right. Okay. And what were some economic downfalls or rises that stand out to you in your lifetime?
When we had, like, I would say, the mediocre downfall of our economy, and it impacted not only us as blacks, but the whole United States. There weren't enough jobs for anyone, but I remember as a child that we were always farming in the summertime to where we always had vegetables and we learned to can everything.
Mm-hmm.
So when the winter came, all we had to do was get a little bit of meat. So we always were prepared for our eating, and so we just weren't out there with nothing. And our parents taught us that we had to learn to work harder in the summer to be prepared for the winter. That's something like the ants.
Yeah. Okay. And how and when was racial tension most evident?
In the 60s, in the latter 60s, I found that racism was out of hand on both sides. When we had Martin Luther King to get killed, one of our representatives of our race, when our president got killed, JFK. And these are some of the things that stick out in my mind because it really had an impact on the economy and the way people were thinking of each other.
Okay. And what did you do to sustain a living and comfortably provide for your family?
My husband and I worked very hard, but like I said before, the economy then wasn't that great. But we learned to work. We were never where we weren't taught to work.
Mm-hmm.
My father worked, my grandmother worked, my mother worked. So it was instilled in us to have anything that we must work for it. And that gave me the confidence in knowing that I could do things. When at one time there were not jobs available, I sewed and did schoolwork at home to make a living to help my husband. And then as times went on and got better, um, I became a school aide. And after that, went back to school and became a administrative secretary.
Okay. And what did Grandpa do? What did your husband do?
He painted. He was on boats, and he worked at Bethlehem Steel, and he was a painter of ships. And then he went to Curtis Bay, where he was a painter.
Okay, nice. And what part of Baltimore would you say you identify with the most and why?
Baltimore County I identify with most because that's really the only place that I've ever lived. I've lived in Baltimore County all of my life, 67 years. And the reason I said that the county helped me is because in the county, we didn't really bother each other, but we helped each other. It was community orientated. If somebody needed something, then we're willing to share. And this made a great difference.
Okay. So how did you feel, so being from and living in the county all of your life, how did you feel going to different areas? Did you feel at home there too, or how was that?
Going into Baltimore City I had to learn to adapt because going in the city was way different than in the county.
In what ways?
I remember when the rides were, and we lived in the county. In order for us to get into the city without anyone interfering with us, we had to wear a black banner on our cars to let the Black Panther know that we were black. So that's one of the things that really stuck out in my mind, that things had gotten really bad, that we couldn't just go from the city and into the county.
You had to identify yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. And what would you say was a struggle and also a benefit from growing up in this county, Baltimore area?
The benefit was, like I said before, I think it was the communication between our people, that we didn't, like I said, we weren't that come close, but we weren't statically far away.
Right.
In other words, if I really needed something in the county, we looked out for each other, black and white. Not all white, not all black, but we could like come together and work and communicate to keep things on an even slope.
Okay. And what would you say would be the struggles? Or were there any struggles for you in the county?
There's struggles everywhere. I mean, you're not going to get your total way about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And by you being of two different cultures, or I'm black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're this, there's going to be some turmoil sometimes. But if you learn to communicate with one another, this helps the whole situation. And most of the time, that's what would happen.
Okay. And what did your parents do to find independence and support themselves and their family?
My father was a shipyard worker, and my mother worked in the VA hospital in food services. And they just made a way. Like I said, they all worked. There was no thing of, well, you don't have to work. Everybody had to work. This was essential. This was like a law of the land.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate your time, Miss Agnes. Thank you.
You're welcome.